we're going to create a number analyzer that is going to analyze numbers one after another until the user wants to quit. So we're going to create a loop where we don't know how many times we have to run the loop. It all depends upon what the user enters in. Do they have more numbers that they want to check, or are they finished? So we're going to look at how a while loop can be used to run for an unknown number of repetitions. So we'll start by downloading our number analyzer zip file. Okay, so it's just our basic template, and we are going to have to add the code in to actually analyze a number. Now I can write my code just as if I were in the console or if I was using a JavaScript runner. The HTML is just going to bring this up and run it. So let's see what we're supposed to do in this program. We're going to write a number analyzer. So we're going to write a loop that quits when the user enters 0. Inside the loop, we're going to ask the user to enter a number and quit. And if they want to quit, enter a 0. Then if that number is positive, we're going to alert that it's positive. If it's negative, we're going to alert that it's negative. If it's 0, we're going to say thank you for participating and then quit, because that was our signal to quit. So let's break this down into simpler steps. Let's look at just analyzing the number first. So if we want the user to enter a number, we have to prompt for a number. And then we want to tell the user that if they want to quit, what they need to do. So I'm going to say enter 0 to quit. Okay, so that will prompt the number, but I haven't stored it anywhere. So let's create a variable to store that in. So we're going to get the number, and then we want to check. If the number is positive, then we alert a message that it is positive. Well, if we want to do a condition, we have to use the if statement, and the condition goes in parentheses. So if our number is positive, if our number, positive means that it's one of our numbers like 1, 2, 3, and up. So it can't be negative, so that means it's greater than 0. So if our number is greater than 0, then we're going to write the message, the number, and then it says I have to give the number in the message. So the number, whatever that number is, positive. So how do I get that number in here? Well, I have to use concatenation. So I'm going to close my quotation marks to make 2 separate strings and use the plus sign to concatenate them with the value stored in number concatenated in the middle. So it's the string, the number, adding the number to that, and then adding is positive after it. Okay, so we've handled the step on line 5. Next step, we want to check if it's negative. Well, that means we're checking if number is less than 0. And if it is less than 0, that means it's negative, like -1, -2, -3. Negative numbers are just like a bill. You owe that amount rather than that you have that amount. So we'll put in the number, and then we just want to do the same thing, concatenating the number. So since we want to go to the memory location called number and get the value out, we can't have quotation marks around it. And then we literally want to say is negative, so we do put quotation marks around that. And even though the browser doesn't care, we should be precise and put our semicolons in. So I was getting a little sloppy there. So here's our first statement. We end with a semicolon. Here's our if. It's not the end because it's a condition that we are going to do this statement if it's true, so we don't want a semicolon there. Now, a number can't be greater than 0 and also less than 0, so those are mutually exclusive, meaning it can be only one or the other. So we can go ahead and use an else here to make the code more efficient. If the number is greater than 0, we're going to alert that it's positive. If the number is less than 0, we're going to alert that it's negative. Then it says if the number is 0, alert a message saying thank you for the participation. If it's not greater than 0 and it's not less than 0, there's only one other choice. It has to be 0. So I could say else if number is equal to 0, then alert thank you for participating. However, since the only option is that it is 0, I don't actually need this if here because that's the only option. But let's leave it in there just for fun. So let's see if this part is working. I'm going to refresh. The hello is still there. Please enter a number with a 0 to quit. So I'll put in 34. It says 34 is positive. Well, that's good. Now I don't have my loop yet, so it's just going to stop, but I can run it again and I can put a negative number in, -9, and now it says it's negative. Run it again and I can put in 0. Oh, that part failed. Let's take a look and see what's going on. We were assuming that it's greater than 0 or less than 0 or has to be 0, but it's saying it was something other than 0. Well, what could it be? Let's alert what's in number to see if we can figure out what's going on. Okay, I'll put in a 0. It says it's a 0, but it's still not giving us this message. Well, what do we know about the prompt? The prompt returns a string. So what's actually in here is the string with one character of 0 in it. So in order to actually have it do this comparison and have it be true, well, one thing we could do is say, go ahead and let implicit conversion work. We only put 2 equal signs, and then if this number converts to the number 0, then it will be equal. Now we put in the 0. We see that there is a 0 in there, and now it actually is giving us thank you for participating. So it was able to implicitly convert that number to the 0 and see that it matches. Well, that kind of leaves things up to chance and makes your code a little more prone to error if you go and change it. So let's put the triple equal sign back in and just explicitly convert the result of that prompt. So everything to the end, the result of that gets converted to a number, and then we don't have to rely on implicit version for a number here. So let's see if that works. Okay, that worked for us. So, you know, all these alerts are getting a little annoying, so we don't need the hello anymore. We don't need the number anymore. We know we're getting the number out correctly. We've completed all of these steps, and what we need to do is to create a while loop that will continue until the user enters 0. Okay, well, what code do we want to repeat? Well, we have to repeat all of this code. Every time we rerun it, we have to enter a number and it tells us what it is. We want all of that to keep repeating. So let's create our while loop. And for some condition, we want to do everything we've written so far. And then it's nice if we go ahead and indent everything in the while loop. And we're going to talk about style very soon to make it easier to read, that we can see that everything from line 12 to 23 is inside the loop because it's all shifted in. Okay, so here's our loop, and now we need a condition. Well, when do we want to repeat the loop? Pretty much anytime that the number is not 0, we want to repeat the loop. So while our number is not equal to the value 0, then we want to keep running through this. But we have a problem, don't we? We have to actually prompt for the number before we can check if that number is not equal to 0. If we move this outside of the loop, We call that priming the pump, and that's not something that I'll be testing you on, but it is the computer science terminology for it, that you're going to make an initial assignment to the number before you go into the loop so that you can check to see if you want to go into the loop. Because if we put a 0 in there, then we wouldn't want to go into the loop at all. Now the problem is that if we run it like this, and let's just try it, outside of our loop, we get the question. So I can put a 0 in here, but it didn't enter the loop at all, and so we didn't get a thank you for participating. Okay, well, we wanted a thank you for participating when we entered the 0. Whenever we leave the loop, they will have had to have entered a 0. So we could just move that thank you for participating outside of the loop. So now if they enter a 0, it will say thank you for participating. Okay, so it came in, it said that, well, this is false, it is 0, so it skipped all the way down to the end of the while and then just alerted thank you for participating. Now let's try a different number. So we'll put in 9. 9 is positive. Oh, uh-oh. We've gotten ourselves into an infinite loop because we've moved this question outside of the loop because we needed an answer before we could decide what we wanted to do. So this priming of the pump, this question needs to be repeated inside the loop. So let's copy that line and let's put it at the end of the loop so that we can get our next number. Now when we have a var in front of it, that means declare a variable named number. Well, in this case, we don't want a new variable named number. We just want to reset that number to a new value. So we'll take that var off of there. This is not a function, so we are not changing the scope. Well, unfortunately, when you get yourself into these infinite loops, all you can do is kill it, and then you have to reopen that file again. So I'll go back to my desktop, find my working directory, and my number analyzer, and open it back up. Okay. When we open it, it starts running right away. If I put a 9 now, it tells me 9 is positive. Oh, good. It asks me for another number, so I can put in something else. And I can keep going, putting in any numbers I want, and it will tell me if that number is positive or negative. When I'm done, when I don't have any more numbers to check, I put in my 0, and it says thank you for participating. That's exactly what we wanted. So here we are. We've completed our program. We've primed the pump to get a number to start with. We check if that number is something we are going to do our number analysis on. If not, if they're quitting right away, we're going to jump right to thank you for participating. If they put in something other than a 0, then we're going to start going through this loop. And this loop will just keep going until the user enters 0. So the programmer does not know how many times this loop will execute, and instead we're using a sentinel value. We've chosen this 0 to be the signal that we want to stop. And sentinel value is another computer science term, and I won't test you on that, but it is what it's called when we choose a value that's going to indicate now is the time to stop. This is a special value, and that value signals that we're going to quit the loop. And that's it. That's the number analyzer.